So, way back in time, when you and your friends didn't have enough money to go to the pub, somebody would suggest watching a film. The only problem was that everybody had seen all the big films, or at least one of us would have done. Therefore, you ended up watching an 80s, 90s slasher film. Now, I wasn't particularly big on these films because the plots and the characters are pretty thin, and I would spend my time trying to work out how they did the gory bits. Therefore, my heart sunk a little bit when someone chose Return of the Living Dead. But I was in for a big surprise, because this was a comedy horror. Now, I really should have picked that up from the first two opening shots. The first one is like one of those standard disclaimers you often see, but with a twist. Paraphrasing, it goes something like this. The events portrayed in this film are all true. The names are real names of real people and real organizations. So not doing what they normally do, which is to kind of protect themselves from being sued or something. And the second shot is the sign of UNIDA medical supplies. It's obvious now when I watch it. And the sign is lit up at the end of a typical sunny day. The main shift is over, but the evening shift is just about to start. Freddy is a new employee, so Foreman Frank shows him how to process an order of skeletons. Frank teases Freddy with a few scary stories about some of the specimens, including a corpse in the freezer room, which will be sent on to a hospital for them to do some investigationary work. Now, films of that time really did not know how to portray a gang of punks. Always the hair was too bright, too perfect, and quite honestly, too clean. There was always far too many chains and leather studs. It was just always over the top. But because this film is making fun of other films in the genre, I mean, even the names of the gang, which are Spider, Trash, Chuck, Casey, Scuzz, and I think Suicide, it's all standard stuff. Anyway, the gang are trying to decide where to party that night because tomorrow is the 4th of July. Tina, who is Freddy's girlfriend, and she's dressed quite ordinary compared to the rest, says she has to meet Freddy after his shift ends, so they all decide to go there. Whilst they're doing some paperwork, Freddy asks Frank what is the weirdest thing he'd ever seen in the store. What Frank tries to convince him is that the movie Night of the Living Dead, where corpses turn into zombies, was actually based on a real case. There was a chemical spill at the hospital, which somehow managed to get into the morgue, and all the bodies started to jump around as if they were alive. It had to be closed down by the army, and they shipped all the bodies out in canisters. But due to an order mix-up, all the canisters containing the bodies were shipped to this very store. Freddy is trying to process this and doesn't really believe, but Frank says, "Do you want to see them? They're stored in the basement for the last 14 years. Frank opens the lid of one of the canisters, and through the sealed glass section, a mummified body can be seen. A nervous Freddy asks whether the canisters are airtight. So what does Frank do? He gives the canister a huge slap, saying, "Of course they are. They were made by Harmony engineers." And both are immediately enveloped by a burst of green gas, which completely fills the basement. Over the opening titles of the film, we watch the gas be sucked up into the ventilator, travel through the building's ductwork before spilling out into the freezer room to where the corpse was being kept. And beneath the polythene covering, it starts to move. The gang, having arrived outside the store, realize that Freddy doesn't finish his shift until 10 p.m. So they decide to hang out in the cemetery next door. Of course, there's a cemetery next door. Anyway, Freddy and Frank come around and clamber to their feet. The body that was in the canister is gone, and both of them are gasping for air and coughing. Now, what do you think is the best solution to this? Well, Frank's solution is to spray some deodorant around to get rid of the smell. It's a horror comedy. As he does so, though, he notices some of the animal specimens have come to life. And then they hear frantic hammering from inside of the freezer room door. In a panic, they call their boss, Bert, who says they need to cover this all up. And of course, as you'd imagine, in doing so, they are about to make things a whole lot worse. Now, this film has stayed with me for a very long time, and I think it's because of one particular scene. Later on, some of the characters seek sanctuary in the morgue, which of course is situated in the cemetery. The particular bit I like is the dialogue around Frank and Freddie's condition as they continue to deteriorate from the effects of the gas. Now, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but the journey of the developments from that point are quite a good writing insight. I certainly wish I'd written it. And if that was not enough, just before this scene, when the zombies are attacking the adjoining chapel, we get to hear the Cramps track Surfing Dead, which is a great track as well. A quick word on the zombies in this film. They actually have some elements of character. And there's an iconic line which goes something like, "Send more cops." But I'll let you discover that. If you want to watch a vintage horror movie, which may also amuse you, then I would recommend this one. On the outset, it appears as a straightforward, formulaic horror film with all the tropes of the time. And yes, the acting is over the top, dialogue, tongue-in-cheek. But what it does do is parody the genre perfectly. So thank you for watching this year's Halloween special, and this is as good as it's going to get.